Questions from the committee?
You gotta start over.
Huh?
You gotta start over.
No. No, thank you, as my granddaughter would say.
Okay, thank you. Rakia Medley.
Good morning. My name is Rakia Medley. I'm the Bureau Chief of Compliance at the Office of Professional Licensure and Certification. At this time, OPLC takes no position on this bill. We have spoken with a few of the mechanical safety and licensing board members about this, and upon speaking with them, some board members have expressed some concerns. OPLC has not had an opportunity yet to meet with a quorum of the board for them to take an official position. And they would like the opportunity, once they meet, to issue something in writing to the committee.
And when is their next meeting?
I believe it's February 9th. 2022.
Questions from the committee? Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Fusco.
Good morning to me. I represent Granite State Trade School. I've been a licensed plumber pretty much my entire career and have taught plumbing apprenticeship classes since possibly back in 2006, 2007 here in New Hampshire. We also have, I believe, the only online plumbing apprentice training program in the state. And we work for the New Hampshire, actually the National Plumbing, Heating, Cooling Contractors Association Educational Foundation, and they have developed a fast track for service plumbing training program that is available for just the situation that these people are presenting, to hopefully get more plumbers in the field in a faster fashion on the service side of the industry. It's being used in about 30 other states with tremendous success. And if we're going to approve something like this to bring plumbers in on a short-term basis to get them approved to work independently, it will be a great training program to be considered as part of this approval for their this short-term licensing for a service plumber. And that's basically what I want to present to the board. I'm more or less in favor of the bill because we definitely need a way to bring more people into the trade quicker. There's a tremendous shortage. We cannot entice enough people, young people, to come into the trade. And I think this would basically be an open door for them to want to explore to get into the trade for a career. Thank you.
Questions from the committee? Thanks. Ken Pierce.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Ken Pierce, and I just wanted to say something quick. I don't feel this is good for the health or safety for the people. That's about it.
Can you give us an example how it's a safety issue?
If somebody wants to change a shower faucet in a wall, they could set a building on fire, cause a flood. Doing this kind of work. I had to go through the proper training, and I think other people should too.
Questions from the committee? Yeah.
It's never great for short arms.
Good morning, and thank
Good
you
morning.
for coming today. So there is, there are a number, over 2,000 hours of direct supervision that's involved in this. And so you still, I just want to be clear, you still don't think that's enough for, like you just mentioned 2 examples. It could still put a person in a position who is doing this work that wouldn't be prepared. Okay, thank you.
I think the current apprenticeship works. I'm just not for changing that.
Okay. Thank you.
Senator Kavanaugh?
Oh, wait.
Okay, all right. Good morning. So I'm sorry that I'm late. I had to introduce another bill in a different committee. Are there any further questions from the committee for this witness? I guess not. So, okay, thank you. We're gonna, the next person to be called is David Pelletier. Good morning, Mr. Pelletier.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, committee. My name is David Pelletier. I live in Dunbarton, New Hampshire. I'm representing Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Local 131, and I'm here to oppose this bill. And the main reason I oppose it is that right now I know that there are temporary or actually proposed rules in the at the Mechanical Licensing Board. Changes to Safe Mech 100, 102.1, 102, or 102.01, 102.17, which deal with apprenticeship and supervision individually, definitions, and also there's proposed changes to the 300 rules dealing with plumbing apprenticeship, supervision of apprenticeship, and direct supervision. The board had worked on these rules for a couple of years. They need to be brought forward. With these rules, it would allow the current apprentice who's serving in an approved apprentice program to work without direct supervision. So with just supervision, which could be a daily check-in, could be a phone call after their second year. So I believe this legislation is it's unnecessary. I think there's a mechanism in place right now. If the licensing board will bring those rules forward for a hearing and get them to GELCAR, I think it'll do just what this bill is proposing without creating another program, another license structure, where we don't know where, once someone gets this limited license, where do they go from there? How do they do it? Rather than create all this uncertainty, the board should bring the rules forward and we can get a third-year apprentice out there with limited supervision and they can be doing this type of work, go through their entire apprentice program and become a journeyman plumber. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, Senator Kavanaugh and then Senator Prentice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I was going to ask, for the 2,080 hours, that's 1 year, correct?
Correct.
And typically, it's a 4-year program?
So the plumbing apprenticeship is a 4-year program, but the board has created a pathway to make it a 3-year program by testing out of your first year. You have to take that test prior to registering. I believe it's prior to registering. So you could effectively, someone can take that test, start as a 2nd-year apprentice, then they would work with the proposed rules, they would work that 1 full year with direct supervision, and then if the rules were to pass, which we're hoping they would, that 3rd year they could be out there with, somewhat limited supervision.
Right. So, follow up?
Yes, please.
So typically, it goes to the board first, then comes to us, correct?
Correct.
And you're meeting early February, I think the testimony
I am no longer on the board. So I'm not speaking for the board.
Okay.
I was on the board. I know these were in process when I was still there. I've been looking at the minutes and I haven't seen them, being mentioned coming up for a hearing yet. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Prentice?
Thank you, Senator Carson. So my question's about the timing on the rules. I think you may have already answered that. You don't know when they're coming forward?
I think the,
It's okay.
the people who want to bring this forward should go to the board and pressure them to bring these rules forward.
Okay.
And I don't know what, if there's some issue there, I don't know. I know when I was on the board, the issue was we didn't have an attorney dedicated to rules, and they were just slow moving. But the board has since moved to the Office of Professional Licensure.
Yep.
Hopefully they have the staff to move this forward.
Okay.
And I believe that's why they moved there. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All set.
Are there any further questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony this morning. Next up is Bill Trombley. Good morning, Mr. Trombley.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, committee members. My name is Bill Trombley. I own a plumbing heating company in Manchester. I'm also here representing the Plumbers and Fuel Gas Fitters and HVAC Association of New Hampshire, which is about 300 members. In concept, this bill is I understand where it's coming from. Kind of go by what Mr. Pelletier has said. I don't think it is needed because, let me back up. I was on the plumbing board in 2008, and I've been on the mechanical board since its inception. I recently, my termed out in December of 2021, so I'm no longer on the board, but I know what's been going on with that board. Well, 3 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we came to this committee and asked for a law change so the board at the time had no say in the apprenticeship, the way the apprenticeship was done. This committee passed a law that gave the mechanical board the rights to write rules to deal with their apprenticeship. We worked with the Department of Labor and also the Department of Education on coming up with some changes so we could get more people in the trade. We came up with a first-year bypass test. We have an MOU signed with the Department of Education that recognizes that first-year bypass test. We also have an agreement with the Department of Labor that recognizes that. That takes a 4-year program down to 3. And with the help of some of the past board members, Mr. Pelletier, Steve Labby, Steve Chartier, we came up with rules for the 100s and 300s and the safe mech for us that would allow to change the apprenticeship program within our program that we have right now. So the question is that direct supervision. Right now, as stated previously, is that if you have an apprentice, a journeyman plumber has to be on site with that apprentice, and it gets costly. I'll freely admit that. With this, a 3rd and 4th year apprentice would be supervised. It's well within the definition of the Department of Labor's definition of supervision. They have to be able to know who their sponsor is. They have to be able to contact their sponsor. And we all felt that with the education of either 1 year or 2 years of knowing that the 3rd year apprentice should be able to go out there and change a faucet, change the toilet, but even more, change a hot water heater, change a shower valve. With this law that you have written right now, it doesn't allow a certified plumber the right to change a hot water heater or a tub and shower valve, because both of those require a permit. And the incidental plumbing is defined as anything that doesn't require a permit or calculation or anything else like that. So this bill is well intended, but I don't think it is needed because some of the acts that the mechanical board has done. Now, those rules were written when we were at the fire marshal's office, didn't have a staff to do, to help us with the lawyer part, the attorney part of it. They were written, the board has, the old board has approved them, but COVID kind of hit, put it to the back burner. We were moved to the OPLC in July of 2021. So that's been taking some time to get everything up and going, so they would know the mechanical board. But I would say the same thing that Davis said, is that the people that want this board should show up to those board meetings and press the mechanical board and the staff of the OPLC to get those rules in front of Gelcart. You could do it within 6 months. This law will be in effect in 2023, and then you have to write rules. Then you have to work for education. Who is in charge of the education? Currently, right now, with the law, the mechanical law, the Department of Education is in charge of the plumbing apprenticeship education program and the Department of Labor. The mechanical board doesn't have anything to do with the plumbing side of the education. They have say for the gas, but not the plumbing. So you're going to have to come up with a course, either one through, like Mr. Fusco has said, through PHCC. You have to get somebody that will oversee the school. You're going to have to get somebody to make sure everything is in practice, testing, and everything else like that. Then it's what happens to these certified plumbers after they come certified plumbers. Are they apprentice? Are they a plumber? They're kind of stuck in limbo because they're not going to be recognized by the Department of Labor as an apprentice. So they're going to be a certified plumber for 2,000 hours, which is a year. But if they want to become a journeyman plumber, they're going to have to still go to the 4-year program or the 3-year program, making their apprenticeship, 5 years. So it doesn't mesh up with our current system. And as I'm stating, I don't think it's necessary. We just need to get the mechanical board to get these rules in front of Gelcart, and it could be done by the end of the summer. I would ask this committee to oppose this bill and work with have the mechanical board pass the rules that they have.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions for Mr. Trombley? Senator Kavanaugh?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have to start off, Mr. Trumbull is my plumber, and I gotta say, I see him more in Concord than I do in my basement from now on lately, so. So I did see, I don't want to speak for Mr. Porter with OPLC, but do you think we can get to a good spot with the board and OPLC working together to make something work? And
I would hope so. I mean, the rules are already been written. They're on paper. They were turned over to the staff of the OPLC in July of August, and to be honest, if they don't have them, I have them. I've kept everything. So they're already been written. They probably need to be reviewed by the current board because the current board wasn't there when these rules were actually written. But they have a meeting coming up in February. Get in front of the board in February. Then get it to the OPLC lawyers and get it back to the board for a public hearing in March. So you have a public hearing in March, get it to Gelcart. I don't know what Gelcart's schedule is, but get it to Gelcart. It can be done by the end of the summer. It's just, the place is in there. We understand that everybody has a labor shortage, not just plumbing. Everybody has a labor shortage. The board started out 4 years ago working with the Department of Education, trying to get high school people into the field. One of the people here is the director of New Hampshire Mechanical Trade School. They have a contract with the state that they're bringing in high school students to learn the trades. That's what we kind of need. That's where we have to start to get people into this trade. That's where we need to start. Yes, it's going to get more bodies into the plumbing. It's not going to lower fees. That's not why you do a bill. It's going to lower what you pay the employees is basically what it's gonna do, is, you can have more people in the trade. So as a plumbing company, you're not gonna have one rate for a journeyman plumber and one rate for a certified plumber. You're gonna have one rate whatsoever. So, you know, service work in residential is more than just changing a faucet. You deal with leaks through the walls, leaks coming from the ceiling, leaks coming from a shower valve. You know, people want to change their bathtub. Well, you change your bathtub, change your faucet, you need a permit. You know, I know some people don't pull permits, but legally you're supposed to have a permit. And if you go by this definition of the certified plumber, it doesn't solve that issue. It doesn't give you more people for those people that want to do bathroom remodeling or handyman or something like that. It doesn't solve that issue. There's more to service than just changing a faucet in the toilet.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. The chair will call Stephen Labby. Good morning, Mr. Labby.
Thank you for having me. This is a very exciting time for me to be here, and I'll let you know why. I own Paradigm Plumbing, Heating, Air Conditioning for 16 years. I've gone through the entire program from MST all the way through, so I understand the pain points. I was also on the mechanical board for 6 years, and I was also on the committee for 3 years to try to do exactly what I commend Dave for coming in. I think what happens is we all want change, and I'm glad that Dave's brought this here because we were trying to get this done through the mechanical board. We couldn't get it done, even Billy. I'm 100% on board with Billy, what he said. We went to school together. There has to be change, and there has to be something where a very qualified 2-year person that can work safely. Remember, this person is still with, say, a plumbing company like mine, okay? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to send somebody that has 2 years out there to be unsafe. My insurance would go up. My customers wouldn't be happy. It would be very bad for me. So I can make that executive decision just like Dave would, just like other plumbing owners would do. So I'm in favor of this bill. The thing is where it gets messy is what Billy had mentioned, that we did all of the work, but nothing ever got changed through the mechanical board. 3 years I was with Steve Chartier, Jeff Sear, myself, and we kept working on the language. You know, mechanical board all chimed in. Everybody was on board. There is a way to get this done. And I think that if Dave didn't do what he did with this bill, that we wouldn't even be here now. I've been off the mechanical board now for about 3 years. When I was younger and just starting out, I was very mechanical and good at what I did. And I had 2 years of training, and I was roughing houses with hardly any supervision. Whether that was right, wrong, or indifferent, I didn't flood anything out. To prove that point, if you're in the mechanical trades and you have your gas license, 2 years. You can get your gas licenses, and you could ask Jim about this, and now you're putting in a furnace with a gas-fired burner or oil burner. So I would think that if you were to look and scale, is plumbing more dangerous than gas? I don't know about that, right? I mean, when you think about it. Mm-hmm. So I don't feel there's a safety threat. And here's the other point. If I have to have someone ride with my plumber for 4 years, right, and now I don't, that frees up another plumber to be in his own vehicle, working safely, doing the right thing. So I think if you take what we've worked on at the mechanical board that I'm very proud of, and you take Dave's bill and you mesh them together and do synergy, everybody's going to be happy. As in for the rates and money-wise, that's always the gray area, you know? Is somebody going to capitalize on it? A company that has good ethics will say, yes, if I'm going to send a second-year, third-year guy out to you, I can give you a discounted rate. That's up to the owner, but that is up to him. You know what I mean? So I can't speak out of that context, but I am excited about being here and talking about all this because maybe we can finally get things done. Maybe a temporary with this bill and then slide it on into when it finally gets, you know, as a temporary measure. And I always believed in if the apprentice is in a 4-year program. Still believe in that. But in 2 years, direct supervision versus supervision is really what the discussion is, I believe, here today. Okay? So he still has to become a licensed plumber. He can do smaller jobs. And I think it's a win-win for everybody. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. Okay, are there any other members of the public that would like to testify on Senate Bill 362? No, everyone who has checked the box to testify, and here we got a second sheet. Okay. Are you David Benedict? Please come forward.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being
Good
here.
morning.
Appreciate it. My name is David Benedict. I'm the proud owner of a plumbing and heating company in Derry, New Hampshire called Derry Plumbing and Heating. I'm the good guy and the bad guy that started all this. So I've been in this business now for 38 years. I can't say I've seen everything, but I've seen a lot. So basically what I'm trying to do, everybody's saying that the bad people are telling me that, I'm trying to devalue their license and all this stuff, and I'm not trying to do that. We're just trying to start a new license called a Certified Service Plumber. It has nothing to do with the licensed plumbers or the apprentices. It's just a whole separate license. And the reason for this is, I know from experience, is right now with the rules, they're so stringent that if you tell this younger generation today that to be a plumber, you got to go to school for 4 years. I mean, you can't get them to work as it is. If you tell them that they got to go to school for 4 years to be a plumber, they're going to laugh at you. So the problem here, this is the two major problems. Number one, a good majority of the licensed plumbers are retiring. They're not being replaced. And some of them are, but a good large majority of them are not, because the kids don't want to go to school for 4 years to be a plumber. It doesn't make any sense. You might as well be a lawyer. It doesn't make any sense. Plumbing is not that difficult. When you do like a new construction or a hospital, that's very difficult stuff, and you should go to school for that for 4 years, and you should have a license. But what we do, we don't do any construction work, and what we do is what the majority of the plumbing companies around here do, is service work. The incidental little problems that people have in their house, a leak under the sink, a new outside faucet, a plugged toilet, a frozen split pipe, any of that stuff, I as the owner of a company cannot send a first, second, third, or fourth year apprentice out to do the most simplest job, even change a toilet seat. I cannot send him out there unless he's got a $50 an hour licensed journeyman with him. And what this does, the homeowner is paying huge money when it's unnecessary. It doesn't need to be that way. So the other reason is, the two biggest reasons why I'm trying to do this is because what's going to happen is, and it's already happening, the plumbers are retiring, they're not being replaced. The rules are so stringent right now that we have to have licensed plumbers. I ran ads on the radio, I don't know if you've heard it, for almost a year, looking for licensed plumbers, because we need them. There's so much work out there. And I got 0 phone calls on it. I was offering $10,000 sign-on bonuses, every option you can think of as far as everything, brand new truck. We got 0 phone calls. That's pretty sad. I remember 20 years ago, I used to put an ad in the Union Leader looking for a plumber, and I had 20 people knocking on my door. And now it's so bad because they're so scarce, these licensed plumbers, they're not out there. And the ones that are here are working for the larger companies like Heritage, Bill Trombley. They have them all wrapped up, right? So what's going to happen here? I can see it happening, and if we wait, it's going to happen. The larger companies have got all the licensed plumbers wrapped up. So, and what's going to happen is the smaller companies like me, we can't hire a licensed plumber because they're not available. So we're going to end up going out of business because we just don't have the help. And now you're going to have the larger companies with a monopoly, and they're going to start charging more and more and more money for these homeowners because they can, because there's nobody else to call. And they're already doing it. I mean, I don't know if you've hired a plumber, but the prices are ridiculous what these plumbers are charging. You know, I believe if this bill goes through, we will be able to hire, number one, a lot more of this younger generation that go into the trade. Right now, they're not coming into the trade because of the stringent policy. If we can get it down to 1 year, which is all you need, trust me, I've been doing this a long time, you don't need any more than 1 year experience to go change a toilet, change a faucet, change an outside faucet, fix a leak underneath a sink. You don't need 4 years of schooling for that. The 4 years of schooling that when you go to school, 98% of that they teach you is all about new construction, how to run the vents, how to put all these pipes in the walls, pipe sizing, everything. They don't teach you how to reset a toilet. They don't teach you how to change a faucet. They don't teach you anything like that. So why do I have to hire a licensed plumber that he's not going to be doing anything in my company that he was taught to do in that school? So this is why I think with 1 year of training, we can become a certified plumber to go in and change your toilet seat. Right now, if you call a plumbing company to change a toilet seat, you're going to spend upwards of $400 to have him come do that, and $200, almost $300 to plunge your toilet. It's ridiculous. These prices need to come down, and the only way they can come down is make us companies like us that we don't have to hire a licensed plumber to do these simple little things that anybody can do. I mean, the handyman people are doing it. These management company, all their maintenance guys, they're all doing it. They're not licensed, right? And nobody's saying anything about them, but because I own a company, I have to hire these licensed plumbers. I'll give a good example. 2 years ago, I sent out a 4th year apprentice. This guy can do anything that we do to change an outside faucet for this nice lady in Manchester. When he came out to his truck, this was 2 years ago, when he came out to his truck, there was an inspector sitting in the driveway waiting for him. And he walked up to him and he says, "Can I see your license?" And he said, "I don't have a license. I'm in the 4th year apprentice." He said, "Okay." He took his name down and everything. Well, that day I got the phone call from Concord. I had to go up to a meeting in Concord. And I told him, I said, "Listen, the guy he was working with, the licensed plumber, he was sick. And I had to get this thing done. It was not a big deal. It was an outside faucet. Simple. Any homeowner can do it, right?" I got put on probation for 1 year for doing that. 1 year. And all these companies are out there doing the same thing because they have to, because there's no licensed plumbers available. So they're sending apprentices out on the street and crossing their fingers that they don't get caught. And the state is clamping down on all these people that are doing that. I'm not going to start naming names, but there's a lot of companies that are doing it because they have no choice. So what I'm trying to do is just start a new license called a certified plumber, where you don't need 4 years of training. You cannot go out and do new construction. You can't do any gas work. All you can do is the incidental repairs inside of a house is mostly what we do. And I just want to, there is a precedence that has been set, and I just want to read off a couple names for you guys. So there's many, many states that have already implemented what I'm trying to do. I just want to name a few of them. So we're talking Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, New York, Pennsylvania, Wyoming, Colorado, Idaho, New Mexico, North Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Florida, and Washington State. And there's more. A lot of the other ones, they just don't require any license at all. So this is not something new to this country. This is a problem that the whole country is experiencing, not just New Hampshire. And all of these states have already implemented almost to a T exactly what I'm trying to get done. All I'm trying to do is keep us in business, get the younger workforce working. They want to get into this trade, but they don't want to go through 4 years of schooling, and they don't need to if they're going to do service work. If they want to go do new construction, then yes, you have to go to school, and I'm all for that. You need to do that if you're going to be in the construction trade, because it's very, very important that you know what you're doing. When it comes to that, there's a lot to learn when it comes to that. But to do what we do, like Jim Trombley and everybody else, you don't need licensed plumbers to do this. All you need is a certified plumber. My son went to school for 6 weeks recently to become a certified MA, to stick needles in your arm. And now he's a certified medical assistant. 6 weeks of schooling. Take your car to any new dealership. They advertise our our technicians are all certified. It's about a 6 to 10 week course that they take to work on your car, putting your life in their hands. What if they work on your car on the front end and you drive down the highway and it falls apart and somebody gets killed? With what I'm trying to do, what are we going to do? Flood out a house? Spill some water? People aren't going to die for what we do. It's so easy to be a certified MA or a certified mechanic where you are putting lives in their hands. I don't believe we're not. I don't believe we're putting anybody's lives in anybody's hands, because we're just there to change your toilet seat, unplug your toilet, change a trap under your sink. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. It just doesn't make any sense to have to go through this. We had a meeting with the board, and the board told me straight out, Dave, we are okay with what you're doing. The problem is we tried this in the past, and we never had any support for it. Well, I've produced a lot of support for you guys to look at from many, many, many homeowners, and a large portion of every single plumbing company in New Hampshire are supporting my bill, and it's all right there for you to look at. So this is something that needs to happen. It needs to happen soon, because, again, there's nobody available to hire, and we are passing up. I've had people call me recently, all these frozen pipes that you see what's going on with this cold air. I've had people call me begging me to send somebody out to their house, actually crying when I tell them no, because I don't have the people available to do it. And they say, well, you're the 10th person that's told me that. I'm going to have to go to a motel. And I said, well, I would love to help you. I really, really would. But I can't, because we're already overwhelmed, and so isn't every other plumbing company, because of the stringent rules that the state of New Hampshire has to be a plumber. We're not trying to be a lawyer. Which plumbing? That's all it is. Very, very simple. Not new construction. That's a whole different trade. In my theory is service plumbing and new construction plumbing is two separate trades, and it should be dealt that way. Right now, they've got it. Whether you're a service company or a plumbing company, you have to follow by the new construction rules, and it's wrong, because we don't do new construction, and it's wrong. And I'm telling you, it's just a matter of time before people like me, the smaller guys, are going to go out of business, and then the bigger people are going to have a monopoly, and you guys are going to pay for it in the end. So I'm trying to get this through to help you and to help people like us, and to get the younger people into the trade, get them working. There's so many people out there that want to be plumbers, but they can't, because they have to go to school for 4 years. Now, Jim was saying that, we're going to add another year to that. That's not true. If you come to another year of schooling, if this passes, this goes through, it's not true, because if you go to work for a company like mine, if you want to go to school to get your license, go ahead. If you don't want to go to school and you want to be a service plumber for the rest of your life, then just get your certification. It's up to them what they want to do. So it's not going to affect anybody. It's not going to hurt any licensed plumbers, because they were taught to do what they were taught to do, so they need to go do that. They're not taught to do what we do. They teach them nothing about that. So leave it as two separate trades, which it really, really is. You ask a licensed plumber that does hotels, whatever, to go change a 15-year-old toilet, or go clean it, change it. They're going to laugh at you. They're going to say, I'm not touching that toilet. You know how many times people have gone to the bathroom in that toilet in the past 15 years? I'm not touching it. That's what we do. They don't want no part of it. That's what we do. So I'm just trying to make it, again, so we don't go out of business. You don't get stuck with these large companies monopolizing the pricing, and get the workforce, get these kids into this trade, and it's just a win-win situation for everybody, for you, for me, for the young generation that wants to get into this trade. It's just a win-win situation. So there's no reason why this bill should not pass. And I pray and hope that you seriously take this into consideration and think really hard about it, and pass this bill.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak to Senate Bill 362? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Porter? Yeah, could you come forward, please? Here we go. No, could you find out where the mechanical board is on their roles?
We certainly will. We took note of that, absolutely.
Yeah, because if they're going through the rule process,
Sure.
then the legislation is not needed.
Right.
So we need to find out where they are
Absolutely.
and whether or not they've included something to address this issue.
We'll see if we can maybe get a meeting together with the board before the 9th of February.
Okay.
Pull something together.
Okay.
This way we can get back to you sooner, and then we can also address the issue a lot sooner.
Okay.
Every board
Okay.
ever get together. But they don't have people to call to say, we have an emergency meeting here and we should get together. Zoom meeting at 8 p.m. would be fine.
Yeah, because if they're going through the rulemaking process, we don't have the legislation. Right. Because, I mean, you listen to what Mr. Trumbull said and all the other things that are in place. It's like, oh, well. Yeah, it should, this is them. Oh, thanks.
So I do my own camera. I won't have my camera drawing.
Are we all set? Huh? No. Why, is he here? No, I don't think so. Oh, no, not here. Oh, they have two speakers, maybe we'll get cut off here. Okay, are you, all set? We're gonna go ahead and open the public hearing on Senate Bill 227 FN and recognize the prime sponsor, Senator Birdsall. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. For the record, again, my name is Regina Birdsall, State Senator for District 19, the towns of Hampstead, Windham, and Derry. And I am the prime sponsor for Senate Bill 227 relative to death benefits for first responders who die from suicide. So what this does, all this bill does is include in the definition killed in the line of duty when first responders are, to make first responders eligible for death benefits. I know in the past few years we've had a number of first responders who have committed suicide, and we're just trying to make them whole. I know, and Senator Carson, I can have a conversation with you. There is another bill from the House coming over that we can consider as well. But for the time being, this is the Senate bill, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions for Senator Birdsall? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The chair will call, let me find out here, Lynn Cusack. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Lynn Cusack, and I am the General Counsel and Director of Professional Standards for the New Hampshire Department of Corrections. And New Hampshire Department of Corrections both has handed out a paper copy to you and then sent each one of you our testimony this morning. We are in support of this bill, and one of the things that we wanted just to address with the committee is the need for this bill, especially for corrections workers. Those corrections officers and parole and probation officers that we have in the field. There's recent studies, and there's links to those studies in the testimony that I provided to you that talks about the anxiety levels, the levels of post-traumatic stress, the levels of depression and other mental illnesses that come with working in corrections and as law enforcement. So recently, there have been more studies done relative to corrections officers in general. And those studies show that, for example, one study done by the University of St. Louis in Missouri shows that 53.4%, I believe was the number, corrections officers have signs and symptoms of post-traumatic stress. In general, the trend is about 35% for police officers, which is significantly higher than those in the general population, which is about 6%. The bill, I think that the senator just recognized coming over from the House is House Bill 91. And that bill was carried over from last year. In House Bill 91, it's almost identical language to what we see here. House Bill 91, the commissioner for the Department of Corrections has testified that she wanted to see some more explicit language in that bill that talks about corrections officers. But we tried something new this year. And in House Bill 1319, which is about death benefits in general for police officers, first responders, we asked that the language be changed that defines what a police officer is. It talks about powers of arrest, while our probation and parole officers do have powers of arrest and our corrections officers have limited powers of arrest. We just wanted to explicitly make sure that those officers were included, given the trauma that they likely see on a daily basis. And when I say trauma on a daily basis, prisons are places that are violent. And there are assaults, there are gang-related incidents, there are assaults not only on inmate or resident on resident, but also corrections officers are involved in those assaults. The volume of drugs that come into prisons is incredible when you think about it. It comes in through all sorts, visitors. It comes in through mail, including legal mail. We have incidents of fentanyl, liquid heroin being laced on paper, and that paper being distributed. And it goes for, a small piece of paper could go for up to $600 inside the prison, which creates tension and violence. People are owed money. So they're facing those types of risks every day inside our facilities. And we believe that given public policy, the way that we want to see it is to include those corrections officers in this type of bill. If we can't do it here in this bill, we think that HB 1319, which opens it up for everybody, is an appropriate place, but we do want to see our corrections officers, our field services officers, and our corrections line personnel. Nurses also face those same risks and same mental health issues that we see with our corrections officers. I know the Bureau of Prisons, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, has data. One of the articles I didn't put in the testimony, but the article from the Bureau of Prisons in 2019, the union came out and talked about it was the highest incidence of suicide ever in the history of the Bureau of Prisons, where 13 corrections officers took their own lives as a result of the stress, the anxiety, and one of the factors was being short-staffed and constantly having to work. And that is a factor that we face here in New Hampshire as well. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them at this time. I can also provide additional statistics about the number of deaths that have occurred in the past 5 years in law enforcement in general.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other member of the public who would like to speak to Senate Bill 227? Okay. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We're going to open the public hearing on Senate Bill 357 FN and recognize Senator Birdsall. I try to group everyone together, so you only have to be here once.
I'm trying to do the same thing. Thank you, Senator. Again, for the record, my name is Regina Birdsall, State Senator for District 19, the towns of Derry, Hampstead, and Windham. And I am the prime sponsor of Senate Bill 357 relative to mental health training for first responders. This is a twofold bill. This extends the PTSD Commission through 2023. We're in the process of the PTSD Commission now. We have been for a few years. We've done a lot of good things with it. And we want to just be able to, I know the last year we had to have almost a 3-4 month wait between meetings because we were waiting for the bill to go through. So this is trying to kind of preempt that. It also requires mandatory training, online training for our law enforcement officers, basically our first responders, our law enforcement officers, and our emergency responders and firefighters, fire services and emergency medical service. Basically what this is one of the things that we've discussed in the PTSD Commission to help try and change some of the culture of the being diagnosed with PTS and making people aware, because that's a lot of the problem is people are not aware that there's training out there, and they need to be made aware that this is an issue with our first responders. The online training for the law enforcement would be it's an online training with focusing on PTS, post-traumatic stress, from a program that's developed and delivered by the New Hampshire Police Standards. They're already doing this, so it would be at no or minimal cost to the municipalities. And with the first responders and the firefighters for their training, it would be through the Division of Fire Standards and Training. Again, this is also a program that has been in, already exists, and we've discussed it, and the first responders and emergency service will be allowed to go through their online training. We also have discussed with NAMI. They are on on the PTS Commission. They are also willing to do some of the online training. So with that, I'll try and entertain any questions. We also have individuals here who would like to speak to this as well.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Senator. Are there any questions from the committee? I just have a quick question. The online training, was that in a bill that you had filed last year? Because I just wanted to make sure, because you and I were both on a committee at conference for that bill, and it passed the Senate. It wasn't an omnibus bill, but the House had objections to omnibus bills, and it died. So
that is correct.
Okay.
This was in last year's omnibus bills. We had the PTSD Commission as well as some online training, but we also had mandatory in-person training. That would have been a major cost to the municipalities, so we decided to go with straight online training. We tried to discuss it in the Committee of Conference, as you know, and the House would have nothing to do with it, so I am putting it in again.
Thank you, Senator.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The chair will call David Goldstein.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is David Goldstein, and I'm presently the police chief in the city of Franklin. I've been a police officer for more than 42 years, and I've been a police chief for more than 18 years. I also chair the legislative committee for the New Hampshire Association of Chiefs of Police, and I want to let the committee know very briefly that the chiefs support any legislation that addresses law enforcement mental health issues at all levels. Therefore, we support SB 357. Certainly, we support the continuation of the commission if we want to improve law enforcement services, et cetera, to the public. And we support the mandatory training, the required training for any online or in-person mental health training. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee might have.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Chief. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none? Thank you very much. The chair will call Russell Conte.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, members of the commission. My name is Russell Conti. I'm a retired major from State Police, 32 years of service. I then immediately went into a brand new created position for about the last 4 years as the Mental Health and Wellness Coordinator for State Police. I also chair the State Suicide Prevention Council, and I'm currently the president of the Board of Directors for NAMI, New Hampshire. So I'd like to talk about a couple of things. First off, certainly NAMI, law enforcement as a general, and first responders support mental health training. Really, the mental health training that's got at a very basic level at the police academy and throughout your career is fairly minimal. There is some online training that was done in past years, again, very minimal. State Police had a couple of Moodle courses that they used, but the importance of it and the significance of it, you know, we really can't overstate. So having something in place that would provide at the police standards and training level, at fire standards and training level, at the EMT level, a required training that can be part of an annual certification is going to just be a movement in the right direction. Not only does it affect the mental wellness of your first responder, but I think it also affects the level of service that they provide. Having a better recognition of what the mental health challenges are, what people that deal with mental health illness throughout their lives, mental illness, how they deal with, how they interact. So I think overall, not to talk long-winded, but it's positive. There is no negatives from what's contained here.
Okay, thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The chair will call John McAllister. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Madam Chair and the honorable members of the committee. I thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of Senate Bill 357. And for the record, my name is John McAllister. I currently serve as the Secretary Treasurer of the Professional Firefighters in New Hampshire. I work for the City of Nashville Fire Department, where I've been employed for the past 22 years. We have also submitted written testimony, so I will keep my remarks short this morning. The PFNH advocates for the health and safety of the brave men and women who protect the citizens of this great state. In the fire service, we are routinely called to scenes of catastrophic incidents involving severe injuries, tragic loss of human life, and property loss. It is well documented that the effects of these exposures may result in psychological injuries or even suicide among our members. It is because of this that I testify before you today in support of Senate Bill 357, that relative to mental health training for first responders. When we consider that the modern day risks our firefighters face, including cancer exposure, heart and lung disease, and repeated injury, result of physical strain and emotional stress, studying behavioral health and wellness of firefighters becomes increasingly more critical. The professional firefighters of New Hampshire, as well as the International Association of Firefighters, have made strides in reducing stigma of mental health among our members. But we have great work to do. We have great work that the Commission has done to build on its efforts. The Commission to study post-traumatic stress disorder in first responder proves that the state of New Hampshire cares about the mental health and well-being of our first responders. However, there is far more work to be done to determine how we can combat this occupational illness. It is extremely important that the state of New Hampshire take the next step to require the much-needed mental health training for first responders across the state. As such, the professional firefighters of New Hampshire urge the committee's full support of Senate Bill 357. I thank you again for the opportunity to testify this morning, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee might have.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you again.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak to Senate Bill 357? Okay. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We're only 2 minutes behind. That's not too bad. We can probably...
We're moving along today.
We're going to go ahead and open the public hearing on Senate Bill 330FN and recognize the prime sponsor, Senator Gaida. Good morning, Senator, and welcome to Senate
Good morning, Madam
ED&A.
Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Bob Gaida, Senate District 2, and prime sponsor of Senate Bill 330. This is a bill that's an outgrowth of the last 2 years we've had of COVID, where we have basically allowed open use of licenses across borders to facilitate providing levels of care that we need. And in the process of so doing, one asks the question, why not reciprocity now? There are a number of issues that we address with this bill. First, to work and to advance the role of OPLC, which has been largely ineffective for any number of reasons since its inception a number of years ago, between changing directors and requiring legislation to put it in a position to do what it needs to do. One of the functions of OPLC is, of course, oversight of the applications process. And that's being worked through in another bill of mine, Senate Bill 313. Of course, what we're finding as the OPLC begins to operate, there are some growing pains with it. And of course, there are boards who are resisting for any number of reasons. Some of them valid, and we'll be addressing those hopefully in amendments to current legislation. But the reciprocity is an issue that especially given the rigors of COVID and potentially any future variants thereof, it enables our citizens to choose doctors of their choosing. It doesn't denigrate standards. I'm unaware, and hopefully we'll be researching data to find out whether there were any adverse effects from the opening up of our borders to out-of-state practitioners. And if there are, we certainly move to address whatever those were. The boards have the ability to do that now. There is one change that I would consider with this bill, and that is to give a board the authority to, with material evidence of poor performance, to reject the reciprocity licensing of another individual. Other than that, it's happening in other states. I want to say there are like 17 other states that have done this, might be 27. But we need to move the issue forward for the benefit of our citizens and their choice of health professionals, and we do it without jeopardizing their health by virtue of the capabilities of those who choose to operate in reciprocity. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Senator. Are there any questions from the committee? Senator, I have a couple of questions. Does this apply to every license that we issue? or is it just for healthcare?
I believe it's all professionals, because the out-of-state healthcare is stricken, and it just says licenses to professionals. So I think it covers all licensure.
Okay. And the second question I have, do you think language should be included in here that, as one of the conditions, that the licensee from another state be in good standing in that state that has issued the initial license?
I would certainly not object to that. I think that would be good head work.
Okay, thank you. Again, any further questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
Next, we're going to call Lindsay Courtney. Good morning, Ms. Courtney.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Lindsay Courtney. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Professional Licensure and Certification. OPLC certainly supports Senate Bill 330, which would permit the agency to issue licenses to professionals from other states, as well as allow OPLC to approve paid feeding assistant programs to permit for CMS reimbursement. These are services provided in long-term care facilities. As the committee is no doubt aware, New Hampshire has a significant workforce shortage, particularly in healthcare, which has been certainly exacerbated during the pandemic. To meet the state's needs, in March of 2020, Governor Sununu issued an executive order that permitted the office to issue licenses to healthcare workers from out of state, provided that they submitted evidence that they were licensed in another state in good standing. These applications were not reviewed by individual licensing boards, but they were reviewed by OPLC staff in accordance with promulgated criteria by the agency. As such, OPLC was generally able to issue licenses in 24 hours or less from receiving a completed application. We issued over 22,000 licenses under this executive order. 63% of psychologists, 47% of marriage and family therapists, and 45% of clinical mental health counselors who were licensed to practice in this state in 2021 were doing so under an emergency license. The emergency licensure process was a great experiment. The data demonstrated that, at least in certain professions, New Hampshire is missing out on opportunities for workforce. Why is it that we doubled the number of our licensed psychologists, for example, by simply requiring evidence that the individual was licensed elsewhere, instead of requiring essays, a photograph, personally identifying information such as height, weight, hair color, eye color, an original certified transcript of both undergraduate and graduate courses taken by the applicant, a copy of the exam score sent by the testing company, a summary of supervised clinical experience form completed by the supervisor of postgraduate supervision, completion of a graduate program course sheet, an internship confirmation form completed by the supervisor of the initial internship experience, a postdoctoral experience form, the supervisor's confirmation of clinical experience form, and 3 professional reference forms, including a form from a supervisor. Perhaps our application process for such applicants, some of whom have been practicing for over 30 years in other jurisdictions, is overkill. At the same time, OPLC has only received a couple of complaints regarding the 22,000 licensed professionals, none of which have proceeded to disciplinary action at this time. This demonstrates that the risk to public safety is not high when the state removes certain existing application requirements for those who have been licensed in good standing and actively practicing in other jurisdictions that are substantially equivalent. To the contrary, the ability to ensure continuity of care as providers move to telehealth platforms and increasing the number of qualified providers in New Hampshire protects the public by permitting greater access to services. Based on this experiment, OPLC could certainly implement, through this bill and the advice of the licensing boards, a system to expeditiously license individuals who already have licenses in substantially equivalent jurisdictions, which would protect the public while at the same time eliminating unnecessary workforce barriers. That said, OPLC recognizes that some, not all, licensing boards are concerned about not being able to personally vet applicants or requirements. As this committee is no doubt aware, there is an inherent tension between certain boards and the agency as it relates to authority due to the lack of clarity in the statutory framework. To be clear, The agency only wishes to work with the boards to protect the public by increasing access to qualified professionals, as the state did under Governor Sununu's executive order. The workforce situation is dire, particularly in healthcare, and the OPLC's ability to respond is quite limited. Not a day goes by that the OPLC senior leadership team does not receive an urgent email, text, or call from a healthcare facility asking for assistance in getting someone licensed so that care could be provided to our constituents. And I'll provide you with a couple of examples, recent examples. Recently, actually yesterday, a vent program manager from a long-term care facility contacted me inquiring about 2 individuals who had been temporary licensed under OPLC's temporary authority in RSA 310A, and whose temporary licenses are slated to expire in January and February. The manager stated she was in a staffing crisis and had no one to work if she took these individuals off the schedule due to lack of licensure. The individuals have applied for permanent licensure as respiratory care practitioners. One person applied in August. The board currently does not have a quorum, so OPLC cannot issue licenses until 60 days have passed since the last correspondence with these individuals, or until March. OPLC lacks authority to further authorize these individuals to practice in New Hampshire, so I'm not really sure what's going to happen with the patients who need that care. Obviously, the facility is going to be scrambling. Second example, a psychology applicant contacted me about an urgent issue impacting her livelihood. Her words, not mine. The applicant applied in March and was approved to sit for the psychology exam. The applicant received her exam scores in October and submitted them to the board. She accepted an employment position, anticipating that her application would be approved as she had passed the exam. Because the board did not convene a quorum until early January, she was not able to work for months, despite passing the exam and having the remainder of her application approved months prior. We have received repeated requests from stakeholders asking that we consider permitting respiratory care students to assist in some limited capacity as the state is grappling with the COVID-19 surge. We have been unable to respond with emergency regulations that would permit such practice, as we have done with student nurses working with the Board of Nursing, due to a lack of a quorum. We received an application from an individual applying for licensure with the Medical Imaging, Radiation, and Technical Therapist Board. The applicant had an emergency license that was slated to expire. The board had yet to meet to adjudicate his application. The board has only met once, I think, in the last 6 months. This facility was concerned about having to cancel patient appointments due to lack of staff. Thankfully, OPLC was able to issue a license on a state holiday, when we were not open, obviously. This individual on a temporary basis, due to the authority in RSA 310A, based on what I would consider a very generous interpretation of our limited authority under that statute. And I could go on and on and on. This happens quite frequently. OPLC believes that the state's workforce needs takes precedence over concerns about the authority of the licensing boards versus the authority of the office, and the lack of clarity in the statutory framework. RSA 332G12 requires boards to grant a license to an individual in another state if the requirements for licensure in that state are equivalent to or greater than those established in this state. Notably, this statutory provision does not appear to permit the boards to adopt additional requirements for licensure beyond that what is statutorily required, but the agency is not aware of any applicant that has ever been approved under this provision. If certain boards that lack regulation permitting flexible portability of licensed professionals utilize the statutory provision, the agency would see no need for further statutory changes regarding portability. And I realize I'm taking up a lot of your time, but I do think it's important to note, because we floated the issues of inherent tensions in the statutory framework. OPLC would certainly support a legislative amendment in order to establish a study committee to consider the issues. RSA 310A requires the executive director to supervise the boards in rulemaking. I'm not really sure what supervision means under the statute, and I know that the boards would agree with that. We would support studying of such issues, including whether there should be state supervision of licensing boards comprised of active market participants, which would effectively confer antitrust immunity onto the boards as set forth in North Carolina State Board of Dental Examiners versus FTC. There really is no consensus as to our responsibilities. Some members of the General Court have described OPLC's responsibilities as limited to paying the bills, while stakeholders have implored OPLC to assist it in responding to workforce needs. For example, in learning that a board had created a subordinate body without legal authority, which has then authorized individuals to act as state agents and solicit honorarium from licensees to receive a required inspection, should the OPLC be permitted to disband such an illegal practice? According to the legislative budget assistant, under the current structure, we have no such authority, and we should simply provide advice that conduct is unlawful. That's fine if we receive clarity from the legislature, if that's what the legislature intends us to do. Another example, if the OPLC learns that a member of a licensing board has been contacting entities to procure a service outside of the state procurement process, should OPLC refuse to procure such service, or should we simply pay the bill even though the procurement violated state statute and policies? What authority do we have to refuse to pay such service? This is why we would support, obviously, a study to clarify some of these issues. If OPLC observes that a board is refusing to investigate a complaint against a board member that it would typically investigate because that person is a board member, what authority does the agency have, or should the agency have, to require the board to investigate the complaint as it would typically do? Should we have any authority to do anything? If OPLC learns that a board has been charging fees without rules in place in violation of the law, what authority does it have to stop the boards from charging the fees? Are we required to issue refunds? Do we have authority to issue refunds for fees improperly charged? I could go on and on and on. These are real life examples that we've had to recently grapple with because the statutory authority and the statutory framework is not clear as it relates to the delineation of where the board's jurisdiction ended when OPLC's jurisdiction begins. So obviously, as you hear testimony from individuals concerned about OPLC's authority versus the board's, we would certainly work with stakeholders to support an amendment that would study these issues if the committee is not inclined to move forward with portability at this time. Happy to answer any questions, and sorry for taking up so much of your time, Senator.
Not a problem, Ms. Courtney. Are there any questions from the committee? Senator Reagan.
So we just went through this long list of things that you wish you could do, but I know you haven't approached me to introduce any legislation. So why are you complaining if you're not taking action to correct these shortfalls?
Well, I would disagree, Senator, that I haven't taken action to correct shortfalls, and I think that's probably why you've received most likely some complaints from some of the licensing boards, is because we have been taking action. And I'm not taking a position on whether or not OPLC should be able to perform any of these functions. What I'm saying is that, I mean, certainly as a lawyer, I want to ensure compliance with the law, but at the end of the day, if the general court believes that the licensing boards should have autonomy to be able to determine whether or not to violate the law or not violate the law, then that's up to the general court to determine. What I wanted to point out is that there's a lack of clarity, and we would certainly support receiving some clarity as to what it is that the general court would like OPLC to do as it relates to certain of these issues that I've brought up. And I would certainly welcome a conversation regarding any potential legislative amendments.
Are there any further questions? I have a couple of questions. The only thing that I'm really concerned about is if someone has a complaint against a person that we've given a reciprocal license to, how does that work? Do they make the complaint to you, or do they have to go to the state who issued the original license?
So generally, if we issue a license, that's how we obtain jurisdiction of the individual. And so unless they are part of a compact and the compact rules are different, they would generally make a complaint that would go to the licensing board in New Hampshire, and that they would assess the complaint.
Okay. And secondly, you're asking us about an amendment, putting together a study committee, and you've given us a lot of information to what you would like to see studied. If you can put that in a document and present it to the committee, you can email it to Chantal.
Absolutely.
Make sure everyone gets a copy so we can kind of get an idea of what you're looking to do. We would appreciate that.
Absolutely, Senator.
And if you could get that as soon as you possibly can, we'd appreciate that as well.
Yep, I have a draft in writing I can leave here with you today and also email if that would be helpful.
Okay, why don't we start with that?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we're going to call John DeJoy.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be here before ED&A. Not sure I've ever been before you in the Senate. I'm here representing the New Hampshire chapter of the National Association of Social Workers, which represents all licensed social workers in the state, and the New Hampshire Psychological Association, which represents many of the psychologists in the state as well. Let me begin by clarifying both of my clients fully support reciprocity, believe it's in their clients as well as the state's best interest to have reciprocal arrangements with licensed professionals in good standing. They've each asked me to bring one concern forward to the committee, which I will do, but I will say that listening to Director Courtney speak about a study committee, both of my clients be in full support and would actively participate in the study committee. The psychologist asked me to make the committee aware that RSA 329D regulates the psychological compact. It's a nationwide compact that addresses reciprocity in some ways, not fully, but temporary practice in a compact state. There are currently 27 states, including New Hampshire, that are part of the compact. And we believe that for those 27 states, the issue of reciprocity can be partially addressed. For the rest of the states, it's a little bit different. The social workers have asked me to bring to your attention line 10, specifically the phrase where the executive director of OPLC makes a determination of whether another state's license is substantially equivalent in consultation with the boards. We would like consultation to be a little bit more robust so that the boards and the director are in an active conversation given what is substantially similar. Now we have we fully expect that Director Courtney would engage in those types of conversations, but she will not be, unfortunately, will not be the director forever, and so we have to prepare for the future as well. With that, I'll end my testimony.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. DeJoy. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony this morning. The chair will call Dr. Deborah Warner. Ooh, I'm glad the sun is out, but it's bright. Good morning, Dr. Warner.
Thank you so much. It's such a privilege to be able to come to the General Court and be able to represent our concerns. Greetings to Madam Chairman and Senators. I'm Dr. Deborah Warner. I'm representing the Board of Psychologists. The board is opposed to the bill as written, and I can tell you a bit why. I also have seen the amendment that Lindsay Courtney has suggested, and the board would be, I believe, they haven't seen this, but I know that the board would like that this would be the outcome that they would like. I think it is a good idea to study this issue. Senate Bill 270 was heard in committee last week and passed unanimously in that, which extends the emergency licenses another 2 years and gives us a chance to see what we learn from this process. It was quite revolutionary to have so much of the care be delivered telemedicine and to have such a great influx of out-of-state providers come and be licensed in New Hampshire, and to broaden the pool that New Hampshire citizens have to be able to receive care. And I can tell you that the Board of Psychologists is in favor of reciprocity, but in particular ways, of course. The board already has rules so that if somebody has high credentials at a national level, they can be processed very quickly. It's one board meeting and then they're done. We could probably even put that into administrative processing. It's quite simple. They need to have a license in good standing. They need to provide us all sorts of data, of course, for their application. That would be part of the database anyway. And then their license from a good state and their national credential with APA or the State Association of Psychology Boards or the National Register. And those are good ways to get a license in New Hampshire. It's already being done. There are, however, other ways to be able to get a license in psychology in New Hampshire if you don't have those high credentials. There are some psychologists who perhaps graduated with a degree in experimental psychology and they run rats. And then they later decide that that wasn't what they wanted to do in their career. They wanted to help people. They wanted to engage with clients and patients and do that work. And so they go back and they take extra courses, but they don't have that same program of study. The long list that Executive Director Courtney talked about in our license process are for those people who have had an off-the-track training. And so we do examine them carefully because that's our stewardship. We have been designed by the legislature to do that and appointed by the governor and council to execute those responsibilities. So I can say that what we're doing right now has those things. The way the bill is written, as you said, noticed, it doesn't have in good standing as part of that. And it also doesn't account for that off-the-track types of license requests that will come in, that we do have a process to deal with. In the end, some of those people may get a license, and many do. Those would then just be part of this exchange program with other states, and that distinction is not part of this bill. However, in the study committee, I think it would do very, very well. I think a commission would also be a good idea. I don't think that Senator Guida was leaning toward commission. He said he doesn't like that process as much. However, with a commission, you could have the civilians do all the work and come back and tell you all about it. But in any case, I think either way, it is not a time to be hasty in doing something as abrupt and revolutionary as this bill suggests, but instead to study it. We have 2 years to take the lessons from what we've experienced in the recent history and changes.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The chair will call Bill Trombley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Committee. Again, my name is Bill Trombley. I just saw this bill probably as when I walked in, so I'm not quite sure really how this affects the mechanical board. As I read it, it does cover all the boards. Maybe this should be more for the healthcare boards than the technical boards. I know for the mechanical board, we already have a way of dealing with people that have licenses from other states. We already have that in our rules. We already have it written up. People with in other states with a plumbing or a gas license can come to the state and get their license within a week or two. So I don't see there's a problem on the mechanical side. And I would like to have the board to keep, the board has the expertise on the reciprocity with the codes. I'm not familiar with healthcare at all, but in the United States, there are some states that do not have licensing with plumbing or gas fitting. So the board has to take a look at all the criterias and see if it was, if you're coming from a state that doesn't have licensing, if the criteria meets ours. So I would ask this committee to maybe amend this bill and to exclude the technical boards, or at least exclude the mechanical board from this bill. I can't speak for if this is needed on the health side. So that is my testimony.
Thank you very much for your testimony this morning. Are there any questions from the committee?
I will add that if a study committee is formed for the OPLC, the group that I'm a member of, the Plumbers and the Gas Fitters Association, would be happy to participate in that study committee.
Thank you very much. I don't see Ms. Courtney. Okay. Mr. Porter, would you be able to answer a question? You haven't testified. You haven't testified, but if you can just identify yourself.
Sure. So, my name is Michael Porter. I'm the Investigations Bureau Chief, OPLC Administrator 3.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Trombley just mentioned in his testimony that in their rules, they already have rules for reciprocal licensing. Do you know that whether or not most, if not all boards, have rules for reciprocal licensing?
They don't all have that. And so I can tell you with my experience on the Real Estate Commission, I was the investigator and prosecutor there. Reciprocity was a big issue as to what courses they had to take when coming to be licensed in New Hampshire. There was questions if you wanted to become a broker, for example, if you didn't have supervision by a New Hampshire broker, you know, did that count towards your years of experience? So I will tell you, not every board has this. It is important, obviously, to increase the workforce here. But I could get back to you with a list of boards that do and do not.
Okay, that was my next question.
Sure.
If you could
Yeah.
let us know
Certainly.
which boards allow this and others do not. I know, remember, we have had other pieces of legislation, and I know that you had specifically mentioned the real estate board, and I remember they came in and they did not want this at all. So rather than create something that's sweeping, let's take a look at what boards are actually doing this versus the ones that aren't before we do anything.
We will definitely do. I'll add that to my list.
Thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate you coming forward.
Sure.
Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak to Senate Bill 330? Okay, is there another? Okay, well, I'm just gonna have them check. Did you sign up?
No, we came in late.
Okay, and I saw Mr. Rancourt, did you?
She was already taken again.
Okay, all right, so we'll have the realtors come in and then we'll go to you, Mr. Rancourt.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Ben Cushing. I'm the Vice President of the New Hampshire Association of Realtors. Been licensed here in the state since 1997 and am an active licensee, as well as I do teach pre-licensing here in the state and other continuing ed credit classes. The New Hampshire Association of Realtors opposes Senate Bill 330 as it is drafted today. This bill would allow the OPLC to grant a New Hampshire real estate license to a licensee from another state without that licensee having to demonstrate any knowledge of the rules and regulations of our state. No other state in the country that I'm aware of allows a real estate agent to apply to get a license in their state without having to provide any type of knowledge of their state's rules and regulations. Every state requires this because we deal, as you all know, with people's sometimes largest financial decision of their lifetime. So to be very clear, the New Hampshire Real Estate Commission in the state of New Hampshire would be sanctioning a person to practice real estate without having to know any of our escrow laws, agency disclosure requirements on lead-based paint, arsenic, radon, any of our septic laws, any of our escrow deposit laws, landlord-tenant statutes, as well as the provisions of our real estate transfer tax and closing documents. Those are just some of the examples of things that are different from state to state. I teach here in New Hampshire. I don't profess to know any rules in Massachusetts, Maine, Vermont, or any other state. Realtors are certainly not opposed to the OPLC and the Real Estate Commission offering recognition of licensees from other states. We obviously already do that. As an example, if a licensee from the state of Maine wanted to get a real estate license here in New Hampshire, they could apply. They could just take the New Hampshire portion of the exam, pass that, and obviously get a real estate license working for a brokerage here in the state. I could do the same thing in Maine. And that already exists and has been working fine. The New Hampshire Association of Realtors would be more than happy to work with the New Hampshire Real Estate Commission and the OPLC to find some alternatives to this bill, which will protect the New Hampshire consumers while ensuring anybody that wants to get a license in our state can do so in a fast and effective manner. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Cushing. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. And Mr. Rancourt, if you want to come forward.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, committee members. My name is Stephen Rancourt. I'm an electrical contractor in the state of New Hampshire. I'm also the executive director of the Electrical Contractors Business Association.
And we oppose this bill as written right now. And before I forget, would be glad to be part of a subcommittee or a committee that would discuss the further issues or concerns with it. Originally, when this was put in, if you look at the paragraph that's being changed, it was temporary licensure. So we weren't involved with that. The Board of Electricians has a reciprocity in place. We have a reciprocity with Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts that's been on a continuing basis for a long time. We're also part of NERA, National Electrical Reciprocal Association, with 22 to 30 other states that we have reciprocals in process and in place, ready to go. I think when we came into the joint boards, which turned into OPLC, there was a lot of other boards that weren't as far along as ours and had the laws in place and the rules in place to deal with this. We have for years. We haven't had any problems. I also don't think that there's an urgent issue when it comes to electrical that we have to put a whole bunch of electricians in the state. But I do agree the issue that they have from a medical standpoint with this pandemic we've been having and everything else going on, that there's something that needs to be addressed. Maybe it needs to be addressed in the fashion that they get their rules cleaned up and put something in place using a format from another board to make it work. But it shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all. It's not a one-size-fits-all. We're having a lot of issues with that in the OPLC. We're supposed to be attached administratively, and more we keep losing the board's ability to do their job, and it just keeps going to the executive director. And that position is going to change over time. It gets appointed, and you never know what's going to happen. So we'd appreciate if they would oppose this bill for now and either start a committee to talk about it or make it just on the medical profession side where you feel that there's an issue and not with the professional side. I'll take any questions if you have.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Rancourt. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak to Senate Bill 330? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We're going to go ahead and open the public hearing on Senate Bill 230 and recognize the prime sponsor, our own Senator Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Kevin Kavanaugh, Senator from District 16, representing the towns of Bow, Candia, Dunbarton, Hooksett, and Manchester Wards 1, 2, and 12. This bill defines and regulates body art establishments. We have a similar bill, I think it was a year or two ago, and it was at the request of OPLC. I had a conversation with Mr. Porter, and he wanted to have the opportunity to explain what this would do. I thought the best thing was to present it and then hand it over to Mr. Porter.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator. Okay, the chair will call Michael Porter. Good morning again, Mr. Porter.
Good morning. Senator Kavanaugh is a tough act to follow. And I didn't bring my comfort dog. Okay, good morning. My name is Michael Porter. I'm the Investigations Bureau Chief with the Office of Professional Licensure and Division of Enforcement. So I did speak with Senator Kavanaugh about Senate Bill 230, and I just want to highlight, I did provide written testimony, which spells everything out, but I just want to highlight the important key factors here. Under current statutes, body art practitioners require licensure, but the established hosting them do not. The structure proposed by this legislation mirrors other establishments requiring licensure, including, but not limited to, barbering, cosmetology, and aesthetics. The proposed legislation provides proactive measures for the protection of the public health, safety, and welfare. By licensing establishments in accordance with rules governing any profession, it provides professional licensing boards with the ability to inspect and enforce proactively without waiting for a consumer complaint to be filed. Under current statutes governing body art, OPLC is only authorized to investigate licensees after a complaint has been filed. The proposed legislation primarily ensures inspectors will have the flexibility to enter an establishment for the purposes of routine inspections to ensure individuals are properly licensed to perform professional services, and that as part of that, basic health and safety standards are in place. What this also does is it assists the boards with uncovering unlicensed activity, and I just want to talk about that for a minute. Unlicensed activity is a primary concern in as much as unlicensed practitioners have not even met the minimum requirements for licensure set by the board, including sanitation and health requirements. Unlicensed practice erodes consumer confidence in the profession and harms the reputation of those professionals who have met the minimum standards required for licensure, including but not limited to health and safety standards. By adopting this particular bill, as you can see later on, I think on the last page, it does involve a new position of an inspector. By proactively inspecting establishments, we are able to uncover illegal activity such as unlicensed practice. And I can give you a couple of examples where that has happened. With the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology, we had several shops in the southern tier of New Hampshire that were selected for random inspection. The inspectors had not been there in 2 years, so they went in to do an inspection. And in one establishment, every employee was unlicensed. So because the establishment itself was licensed with the board, we were able to go in under the emergency suspension practice under 541A and under 313A and immediately emergently suspend the shop license itself, which meant they had to close. Now, we also ensure that due process protections are in place for the licensee. So a mandatory hearing is scheduled within 10 working days. During that time period, in one instance, the inspectors drove by, they tried to reopen. Again, this erodes the public confidence. In 2 instances, I can tell you that I believe the suspensions lasted between 30 and 45 days. But during that time, we worked proactively with the owners to ensure that everybody became licensed, that they were well educated on the health and safety standards, and we reopened them. At the same time, we made a referral to the New Hampshire Department of Justice, and there were 5 counts of unlicensed practice brought against the shop owner for authorizing the unlicensed practice. The individuals that were practicing were from Massachusetts. They were licensed in Massachusetts, but not New Hampshire. All they had to do was come up and do a reciprocal license. So that is one board I know that does have it. And there would have been a problem. So by having the authority to license that establishment, it gave our inspectors the ability to go in and proactively inspect and uncover what they did. In addition to the unlicensed practice, on at least 3 shops, there were some what we call serious health and safety violations. I won't go into all the details, but some of the metal implements that are used on nails, whether feet or hands, had not been properly sterilized, and there were pieces of human flesh in one instance. They checked the foot spas. What you see in the water going in is not necessarily what's underneath by the motor. I can't tell you how many times the inspectors have come back with photographs. I spoke with Senator Sherman about this particular bill, and one of the things we talked about was the health related matters. Bacteria can cause serious health problems in people. People have been harmed. Instead of waiting for that harm to occur and being reactionary, we believe that this bill will allow us to go in and be proactive. So again, this bill was introduced, I think, 1 or 2 years ago, and I'm not sure exactly what happened. I know it was connected with the massage establishment bill as well. So we have now separated the bills, and you know, we still stand by what we stood by at that time, which is this is for the protection of the public health, safety, and welfare, and it makes us a proactive agency rather than reactionary. The other thing I do want to talk about briefly, and it might be the elephant in the room, is law enforcement activity. I know that there were some that believed this was somehow creating additional law enforcement powers. The fact of the matter is most, if not all, boards have statutes or administrative rules that allow us, if we uncover criminal activity, to report out to either law enforcement and or health licensing bodies. Those statutes are already on the book, so this is not an additional law enforcement tool. This is a proactive measure to merely ensure that the people working in these professions have met the minimum standards. Instead of waiting for a complaint, we can do this proactively. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The chair will call, it looks like Ryan Ouellette. Good morning, Mr. Ouellette.
Good morning. I'd like to thank you for your time today. My name is Ryan Ouellette. For the past 3 years, I've been on the, pardon me, the OPLC's Body Art Advisory Board. I did come and speak on behalf of a similar legislature a few years ago. As Mr. Porter said, it was tied to massage, and that kind of torpedoed our legislation because we wanted to tie our inspector together with theirs. So I'm really happy to see that there's some progress being made for it to have its own legislation because, as Mr. Porter said, New Hampshire is basically limited to being reactionary. So if we have any sort of serious complaints with the OPLC or the Body Art Advisory Panel, we don't really have a lot of proactive means to go into studios. So if we're suspicious that maybe someone isn't operating with proper hand washing facilities or sterilization or whatever other things might be necessary for a body art facility to safely operate, we basically have to wait until there's a complaint. So if there is an issue with someone tattooing a minor, tattooing without a license, performing things in an unhygienic way, there's really nothing we can do about it until someone actually makes a complaint and it gets to the OPLC. So I would be really happy to see inspections, a funded inspector. Right now, New Hampshire doesn't have any sort of establishment license for body art, and it hasn't since about 2004. There was previously an establishment license, but it was phased out due to budgetary reasons over 10 years ago, and now it's basically just up to the individual practitioner to operate under their best practices, but it's kind of just the honor system right now. So I would really be in support. The rest of the Body Art Advisory Panel is also strongly in support of this, and all the practitioners that I've talked to in the state are highly in favor of something like this. Most other states, the surrounding states around us, do have establishment licenses, do have inspections, and sometimes clients might see that as a superior option. So some clients might be living in New Hampshire but choosing to get their work done in other states because we don't have establishment licensing, we don't have establishment inspection. So I would really just like to see us be able to raise our level of hygiene to the surrounding states and have verification for that.
Thank you very much for your testimony this morning. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak to Senate Bill 230? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you. Let me know when you're ready. Okay. we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing on Senate Bill 361 and recognize the prime sponsor, Senator Gannon. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning, Senator. My old committee, I miss you all, but it's good to see you. I'm Senator Bill Gannon. I represent Senate District 23 in the middle of the wine country. Sandown, Chester, Danville, Fremont, Kingston, East Kingston, Brentwood, Epping, Exeter, and I don't think I left anyone out. I come here today on behalf of some bail bondsmen. And first, let me just explain one thing, because I've been seeing tons of emails going back and forth to anyone who is a bail bondsman. It's only the words, I'm sorry?
Bail commissioners.
Bail commissioners.
Yeah.
It's only the words in the black on the bill that we're changing. Some people have been misconstruing parts of the already existing law and thinking that that was detrimental to them, but I'm only making mileage changes. So we're just requesting that the bail commissioners who travel many miles they go to police stations, county jails, medical facilities, day and night. Some of them behind me do 60 to 90 calls average a month, and that doesn't include the summer when they get real busy. So their normal weekend is, when I see them, they're tired. Friday and Saturday nights, they're getting 4 and 5 calls. In my district, my commissioner averages about 23 miles. We did submit like his average police station or where he goes to different jails and county houses, averages about 23 miles each way, which works about to 2,100 miles a month. So right now, they're not getting anything for their mileage. They're not getting anything for the wear and tear of their car. We all drove here today, we got mileage. And that's all they're asking for. So again, not about their pay, not whether it's good or not good. Some of the bail commissioners have been saying, no, this is just there's been a coup trying to not deal with the problem that we're underpaid. This isn't anything to do with that. None of us are in collusion trying to pay you more or less. We all are here today just to talk about one thing, just mileage. And that's probably about it. I didn't put in I can put an amendment in on, first I want to get, should they get the pay? That's all I really wanted to deal with today. I can do an amendment on how and what to collect base. We could either do it on what their round trip mileage is or come with an average. Senator Carson, I know you have a lot of experience with the judges and bail work, so you might have a better idea what's easier, but my first thought is just to give them a flat fee so it's easier based on the average that a bail bondsman travels. Or we could just go mileage and they could do the collecting so there'd be no fiscal note. But again, I first wanted to sell the concept that they should be entitled to reimbursement for their mileage and the wear and tear on their auto. And then I would deal with whether and how they collect. I can take any questions. I have commissioners who are going to testify after me who have more practical experience than I do in the area.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Thank you very much.
Question,
yes.
Just before you go.
Sure.
Who is going to pay? Because I'm looking at this as who's going to pay them?
I wanted to leave it open to the committee and I can come up with an amendment. My first thought, but I thought I was going to look at your experience, but they can collect just when they're collecting we said the average is $5, $7, whatever it is, and we'll charge that when they're collecting the $40, they can collect their mileage as part of it. But I wanted to run that by you. You have more experience in that. I wanted to know, before I came up with an amendment on that, I thought I'd defer to your judgment on how to. But the easiest way I would think would just be the commissioners behind me have said they can collect 80 to 90% of a lot of their bails. They didn't see any problem with collecting $5 to $7 more. They could collect the mileage themselves when they're collecting. They take your credit card, they take your debit card at the time when they're doing the bail. They could throw on a $7 or $5, depending on whatever we decide is a fair amount per mile.
Okay.
When they're collecting.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Reagan has a question.
So what's the average mileage?
My commissioner, so this is a very independent world, these bail commissioners, and they're very dispersed. So there's about 100 of them left from what I can tell. And some of them, we submitted this, you should have this, I don't know if you do, if you don't, I'll get you all copies. My bail commissioner who lives in Sandown, he put his 23 most common stops. They average, he goes Seabrook or Exeter, Hampton or his long hauls, and it rounds out to about 23 miles round trip is the average.
So we're like at $11 or $12, not $7.
Sure, we'll say $10 for the sake of argument, or $10 or $11. So, but right now they're getting nothing. So my bail commissioner's getting called out Friday night 5 or 6 times. Saturday night, they don't have enough. Mr. Mensis is going to testify later. He gets 5 calls on Saturday night, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock. And they're like, Eddie, we can't find anyone to come out. And so his wife's, like my wife would be, Jesus, we just filled the tank on Friday and now it's Saturday. All you've done is do bail stuff. You get the wear and tear, you get the mileage. That's all they're asking for, not an increase in pay. Seems like a reasonable want for me, reasonable ask.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you.
The chair will call Ed Mensis.
Thank you. I'm Eddie Mensis from Sandown, I'm bail commissioner. Actually, this month I'm starting my 5th year. It's been quite an experience, and I've learned from the best. Trixie's right behind me. She's one of my mentors. Phenomenal. But we're here for mileage. I think Bill already said almost everything. But, you know, we're the people in the front lines. And he's right. We support the regular police departments, the state police, fish and game, sheriff's departments, and the jails in each county. And we do get called out 24/7. All right? When I take a job on like this, I didn't understand the perplexity of the job. It was supposed to be a wintertime job for me because I have other things to do. It turned into be a fascinating job, interesting job, and we support the courts. Right after the police arrested the defendants, they call us in. And we use our own vehicles. And we'd like to get some support to take care of our vehicles. Everything today is extremely costly, needless to say. I'm sure I don't have to tell all of you that, because that's how it is. And we'd like you to support us in some degree, whatever fashion you come up with, that will give us something towards the maintenance and the fuel that we use in our vehicles. Any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The chair will call Paul Leary. Is that correct?
That is correct, Senator. Good morning, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Paul Leary. I live in Franklin, New Hampshire. I'm a bail commissioner, and on March 9th, I'll be starting my 7th year of doing this. A couple of things to take into consideration. In the southern portion of the state, it's not an issue. You get up in the middle of the state, my area that I'm covering right now, because there's not many of us, is from Allenstown to Campton, over to Loudon, Epsom, over to Bradford, and working their way up and around through the Lakes region on this side of the lake. So the mileage sometimes, like if I have to go to Campton, it's 79 miles round trip. I've been called down to Manchester, that's 77.7 miles round trip. Bigger problem is, and the underlying one is, we're not getting paid. Over a 6-year period, between 32 and 38% I leave on the table. In that 6 years, I'm $41,679 in the hole. So the mileage is nice, but there's 32 to 38% of people aren't going to pay the mileage. So that's part of the challenge, because the bottom line is we're still not getting paid. And then because of COVID-19, the court allowed us to do telebail or remote bailing. So instead of traveling about 4,500 to 5,000 miles a year, I'm down to about 2,000 miles a year. Because the thing is, we still have to respond to the hospitals, to the jails. And unfortunately, Franklin Regional is only 1.2 miles round trip. Lakes Region is like 26, and if I got to go down to Concord Hospital, that's almost 50 miles round trip. And they call us out in all kinds of weather and still expect us to show up. and we drive our own vehicles. So, I mean, that's the challenge, and I appreciate that Senator Gannon being willing to put this in. But understand it's just a Band-Aid approach to the major underlying issue, that the bail commissioners that you got out there working 24/7, 365, when anyone calls and any time. Sometimes I'm working out an hour and a half sleep a day, 2 or 3 days in a row, because there's not enough of us to go out. I'm fortunate because I can do the telebail or the remote bail and still serve a lot of people. Sometimes I can get this stuff done before I could literally get out of the house and get to the police station. So there's an advantage there. But the problem is, still got to make the paperwork up, got to put it in an envelope, put a stamp on it. If there's cash involved, I've got to go out and get the cash, take it to the bank. And, you know, there's no pickups for all of those. So there's a lot of things that are coming out of our pockets to do the state's business. And somewhere along the line, the court and the legislature have got to come to an agreement and simply say that each bail that we write, they pay us $40. They get it off the defendant, and they do it as a court cost. And they pay us on a 2-week basis on whatever we write. We don't write anything in 2 weeks, we don't get a check. At the end of the year, they give us a 1099, we're still an agent, and they don't have to worry about us being an employee. And then we'd be fairly compensated. In 6 years, I've only had one judge waive the bail commissioner's fee for indigency. But the thing that I found striking and insulting about it is, it's my fee for coming out and doing your work, and you're waiving that, and yet I got 32 to 38% that are already not paying me. So it's like the salt in the open wound. So the indigency really isn't much, but what do you mean by indigent? Anyone who gets a court-appointed attorney because they can't afford one, do they fall into that category or not? Those descriptors are not there in the bill, so I do have some concerns while I do support it.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from the committee? Senator Reagan.
So my question is, what's your average mileage, or don't you keep a record of it?
I can tell you that I can just look at the total mileage. I have a sheet where I've broken down every single police department. I've mapped it out. Like I know if I have to go up to Andover PD, it's 25.2. New Hampton's 30 miles. Meredith is 47.7. In other words, I keep track that way, and I have a sheet that I just keep track. But another problem that it brings up too is with mileage. I take that mileage and I add it, and all of a sudden we now have like $39.26. I now have to come up with pennies, nickels, and dimes to make money like I do when we get a cash bail for $131.21 or 31 cents. You got to play with nickels, dimes, and that. And I haven't done that since I was a paper boy. And I'll be honest with you, that was over 60 years ago. So they don't give us any of that equipment either. And when you get up further north, things change from down in the city because one, a lot of times we don't have that broadband capability or cell capability to be able to use our credit card readers. And that starts becoming a challenge. So pretty much we're dealing in cash most of the time only. So another, side problem. Yes,
so back to my question.
Yes.
What's your total mileage and how many calls were that?
Okay, this year I did 573 calls. My mileage was 1,927.6. Last year I did 598, and my mileage was 3,419.6 miles. The year before that, those were COVID miles. The year before that, I did 574. My mileage was 4,396. The year before that, it was 599. My mileage was 4789.4. The year before that, it was 731, and I think it was about 5,600 miles, but that was when I was keeping it by hand, not by on a spreadsheet. And my first year, I did 418 bails. So in total, my 6 years, I've done 3,493 bails.
Okay. Are there any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, committee.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to testify on Senate Bill 361? Did you folks sign up? It was gone before. Ah, okay. Trixie.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Senator Carson, members of the committee. My name's Trixie LaFave, and I live in Londonderry. I've been a bail commissioner and have served the state for 13 years, and I'm here today to speak regarding Senate Bill 361. While this bill intends to provide reimbursement for mileage, it does not contain enforcement for the collection. And it has been the payment of the statutory fee that's been the crux of several years of legislation and hearings. The bail commissioner community is no further along in gaining support and payment for our services since the 2019 legislature established a committee to study this growing problem. The non-payment of bail commissioner fees has been part of each legislative session since 2019. Payment for our services continues at approximately 60 to 65% of the calls that we respond to. And I will have to say that the 80 to 90% by Senator Barton surprises me, and so there's one very fortunate bail commissioner. Since 2019, I've given testimony to the committees in a public hearing with the hope of legislation being passed that would ensure the fees set by the statute is paid for each call. These rates, as I just expressed, are at 60 to 65% within our professional community, yet we continue to answer the calls and assist our courts and our police departments any time of day, every day of the week. During the 2021 session, there was hope that House Bill 498 would bring relief to us, but at the end of the 2021 session, the judicial branch attached a fiscal note to this bill in the amount of $636,000 for 2022 and in excess of $850,000 annually thereafter. That bill failed. If these figures are accurate and is spread across the 100 plus or minus bail commissioners that are presently serving, the state of New Hampshire and each bail commission is expecting each bail commissioner to forego $6,000 to $8,500 annually in the required fee. While I do not want to appear unappreciative of this bill, but driving up the fiscal note for any future legislation to correct the glaring oversight of non-payment to the bail commissioner community would be a mistake. The non-payment of all uncollected bail commissioners' fees, not just those who are determined to be indigent, needs to be corrected with enforcement language. Prior to the passage of this bill, I would ask the sponsors to introduce an amendment to Senate Bill 361, which guarantees payment for those individuals and not considered indigent after the appropriate finding of the court. Additionally, an amendment which provides enforcement tools to the bail commissioner community to advocate for themselves and their rightfully due fees would be appreciated. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony this morning, Ms. LaFave. Are there any questions from the committee? Senator Reagan.
Same question. Do you have an average mileage? Do you compute or record your mileage?
Well, I am now responding to the Manchester Police Department. I had been doing the Derry Circuit Court, so I had a few police departments to go to, but since this past summer, I'm specifically at Manchester PD, and it's probably 24 miles round trip for myself, but the Derry agencies do call me on occasions when they can't find a bail commissioner. So Londonderry, because I live in Londonderry, it's probably probably about 8 miles round trip. Occasionally I'll go to Chester or up to Candia. Candia could be, that's about 20 miles round trip for me. Manchester is 24, I'm gonna say 12 up at the most and back. But when I go to the Manchester Police Department, there could be more than one defendant there. So I could be arriving and spending 3, 4, 5, 6 hours processing defendants.
Are there any further questions? Okay. Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to leave my testimony because attached to my testimony is the fiscal notes that I mentioned for House Bill 498 for you to consider, as well as the copy of an amendment for a statute for the evaluation that the courts were supposed to put in place effective July 2020 for indigency as it applies to bail commissioner fees, not court-appointed attorneys.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sir, if you would come forward and identify yourself for the record.
Madam Chairwoman, my name is James Moody, M-O-O-D-Y. I'm a bail commissioner in Manchester and surrounding towns, Hooksett, Allenstown, Pembroke. Also respond to State Police Troop B in Bedford, Deerfield, probably a couple others I'm just not remembering right now. Bedford, if I didn't mention that. I've been a bail commissioner for approximately 33 months. I'll hit 3 years this coming April. Much like this gentleman behind me, my numbers reflect his, but basically cut in half In my almost 3 years, I'm owed over $20,000 in bail fees. My current mileage for 2021 was approximately 4,000 miles. That's roughly 550 individuals that I have seen. Like Trixie just mentioned, though, in Manchester, oftentimes we are start with one and we wind up with multiple defendants to see. So one of my questions on this current bill is if we are to charge the defendant, how are we going to charge one but not everyone? If I know I'm going in to see one person, I understand that. But if I wind up sending 3 people, and I don't know I'm going to see 3 people, when I get that first call, it doesn't make sense to me that, I'm going to charge the very first person I see the mileage, but I'm not going to charge the other 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 people that I see in the 5 or 6 hours that I'm stuck at Manchester PD, dealing with multiple defendants. So I don't know how that would be addressed. Again, my numbers reflect a lot of the others. In my 3 years, I get paid an average of 66% of the time. Thank you, and if you have any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak to Senate Bill 361? Okay. Seeing none, we will go ahead and close the public hearing, and the committee will be in recess for 5 minutes. committee will come out of recess, and can I get a motion?
So moved.
Senator,
Executive session?
okay, Senator Kavanaugh moves to go into executive session, seconded by Senator Reagan. Okay, I'd like to take up Senate Bill 357, FN,
You want to pass?
and Senator
Second.
Kavanaugh moves ought to pass, seconded by Senator Reagan. Is there any discussion on the ought to pass motion? We had testimony that this is a retread from last year that was in an omnibus bill that failed in the committee conference, so we are all familiar with the testimony and the reasons why this is a good bill and should be able to pass. So we have a motion about to pass. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Is there a motion for the consent calendar? Okay, moved by Senator Ricciardi, seconded by Senator Reagan. Is there any discussion on the consent motion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Who would like to take this one out?
I'll take it.
Oh, okay, Senator Kavanaugh would like to take it. Okay, can I get a motion to come out of executive session? Okay, moved by Senator Prentice. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Senator Kavanaugh. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you all very much. We're done for the day. I really appreciate all your work and. Huh? Oh, okay.